Kenya plans to buy gold and store it with the Bank of England. Yes, you heard that right. A former British colony sending its gold back to London in 2025 for safekeeping. Officials say it's a move to protect our economy, to diversify our foreign reserves, reduce reliance on the US dollar, and strengthen our financial position in uncertain global markets. But this announcement has left many Kenyans asking tough questions. What is wrong with our gold reserves? Why can't we store our gold here? Where is this gold going to be sourced from? Why can't we even store it here, as I said, in Nairobi or even within Africa, in countries like South Africa or Ghana that already have their own gold reserves? And what happens if one day London disagrees with Kenya politically, the same way it froze Venezuela's $1.9 billion worth of gold during a diplomatic dispute? Because this is not just a financial story, it is a question of sovereignty, trust, and control. If our gold ends up sitting in a British vault under British laws, whose economy are we really protecting? Kenya's central bank, led by Governor Kamau Thuge, says this plan is about making the country's savings stronger and safer. Right now, most of Kenya's reserves, the money we keep aside as a country, are held in foreign currencies like the US dollar, the euro, and the British pound. But those currencies can lose value when global markets change, or even when big economies like the US face problems. So the idea is to add gold to Kenya's reserves because gold doesn't lose value easily and it is seen as a more stable, especially in tough economic times. This move is also part of a bigger trend happening across Africa. Countries like Ghana, Zambia, Rwanda, and Uganda have already started buying more gold so they don't depend too much on the US dollar. Kenya now wants to do the same to protect its economy and currency, and you can't blame the country for that. But the only difference is where we plan to keep that gold. Instead of storing it here at home in Nairobi or somewhere within Africa, Kenya wants to store it in London, inside the Bank of England's vaults. Now, let's talk about why Kenya wants to keep its gold in London so that maybe we can be able to understand why London and not here at home. The Bank of England is one of the most powerful and trusted financial institutions in the world. It's been around for over 300 years, and deep under its headquarters are massive vaults that hold gold for dozens of countries. We are talking about over 400,000 gold bars in total. Countries like to use the Bank of England because it offers three main things. First, security. The vaults are among the safest in the world. Easy access. If a country ever needs to sell or trade some of its gold, London is one of the biggest gold markets globally. And then we have recognition. Gold stored there is widely accepted and easy to report, as part of a country's official reserves because it meets the market and audit standards used by the central banks around the world. So for Kenya, keeping gold there makes accounting and global trading easier. But there's another side to it. When gold is stored in London, it's protected by British law, not Kenyan law. That means if there's ever a political disagreement or diplomatic issue, Kenya's access to that gold could be affected, just like what happened to Venezuela in 2020 around there, when Britain blocked it from withdrawing its own gold. So yes, storing gold in the Bank of England is safe, but it also means giving up a bit of control, because at the end of the day, the gold may belong to Kenya, but it's sitting under someone else's roof, and that roof follows someone else's rules. Now, to really understand why storing gold abroad can be risky, let's dig deeper into what happened to Venezuela. We've been talking about it. In 2020, Venezuela had about $1.9 billion worth of gold stored in the Bank of England, the same place where now Kenya plans to store its gold. But when the British government stopped recognizing President Nicolas Maduro's leadership and instead supported the opposition, the Bank of England refused to release the gold. Even though the gold was mined in Venezuela, paid for by Venezuela, and belonged to the Venezuelan people, the country could not access it. The matter went to court in London, and judges ruled that only the government recognized by Britain could control what? Those reserves. Now, that case is now a global example of how politics can affect money. It shows that once your gold is stored in another country, you don't fully control it anymore, or do you? I mean, it's safe because, again, this is one of the safest places to store gold, but only as long as your relationship with that country stays friendly. And that is why some people worry about Kenya's decision. If one day the UK disagrees with Kenya politically or imposes sanctions for any reason, could the same thing happen to us? That is not a far-fetched question. It is actually a real possibility based on what we have seen happening elsewhere. Now, let's talk about something many people are asking. Why can't Kenya just keep its own gold here at home? All right, so technically it can, but to count as official reserves, the kind that other countries and international leaders recognize, the gold has to meet very strict global standards. So first, you need a secure national vault, the kind that can protect billions of shillings worth of gold under constant surveillance. Secondly, you need a refinery that can process and certify the gold to international levels, international quality levels or standards. And third, the gold bars themselves must be certified under what is called the London Bullion Market Association, or LBMA standards. Basically, a global seal of approval that says the gold is pure and can be traded anywhere in the world. So right now, Kenya doesn't have a refinery that is LBA certified. So that means gold refined here wouldn't be easily traded on the global market or recognized by big financial institutions in the same way as LBMA certified bars, right? So even if Kenya mined and stored its gold locally, it could still count as part of our reserves, if it's under the central bank's control. But without internationally certified infrastructure, it would be harder to sell, swap, or borrow against quickly. Are we together up to there? All right. Now, that is why the government says it makes more sense, at least for now, to keep it in a system that's already recognized internationally. But there's a bigger question behind all of this. Why should the world, only recognize gold that passes through London or Western approved systems? Because that is not really about quality. You gotta look deeper and see where the control comes in. And that is the real issue. Kenya isn't just buying gold or storing it there. It's still playing in a financial system where Western countries decide what's legitimate and what isn't. Now, to truly understand or deeply understand why Kenya and many other African countries still depend on places like London, we have to go back in history. I love this part. Now, after independence, African countries were told by international institutions like the IMF and World Bank that to keep their new currency stable, they needed to hold their foreign reserves in trusted financial centers. And those centers were mostly where? In London, maybe Paris, New York, and the logic was simple, or at least that is what we were told. Our economies were still young, our financial systems were still growing, so it was safer to keep our national reserves in Western banks. But that decision created a long-term problem. It meant even after independence, our money and our trust remained tied to the same countries that once ruled or colonized us. So we became politically independent, but not financially independent. And that system has never really changed. Decades later, most African countries are still told that their wealth is safe where? When it's stored abroad. So when Kenya says it's sending gold to London for safekeeping, it may sound like a modern strategy, yes, but in truth, it's an old habit that started in the colonial era. It's the same idea, just with new words, diversifying reserves instead of keeping it safe, etc., but the effects are the same. Our resources stay under someone else's watch, and honestly, to be fair, The central bank does have some real concerns here about keeping large amounts of gold inside the country. First, there's the security risk. Gold is valuable and storing it locally would require high-level protection. You know, we are talking about modern vaults and strict systems to prevent theft or misuse. Secondly, there's the issue of insurance and auditing. This is the international community, you know, expects clear records showing where the gold is, how pure it is, and who is watching it. And thirdly, there is the liquidity problem. Gold stored in London can be easily traded or converted into cash if the country needs money quickly. Gold stored in Nairobi might not have that same global access. These are genuine worries, and they help explain why Kenya thinks London is, you know, the safer short-term option. But it also shows something deeper, that our leaders and financial institutions still believe our wealth is only safe when it's stored outside Africa. That is the mindset, unfortunately, many African countries have struggled to shake off. A kind of financial self-doubt that says, you know, we can mine the gold, but we can't be trusted to keep it safe. And as long as that belief continues, Africa's resources, including Kenya's, will always end under someone else's lock and key. Kenya is not the only country in this position. Many nations, especially in Africa and the global south, still keep most of their reserves in Western banks. Take Nigeria, for example. It holds part of its national reserves overseas, and then in Francophone Africa, some countries under the CFA franc system still have portions of their reserves held in France, even though some reforms have started. And during the Libyan conflict in 2011, about $67 billion of Libya's wealth was frozen where? By Western powers. So the same thing happened again in Afghanistan in 2021 when the US blocked about $7 billion of its central bank funds after the Taliban took over. So the world, it's true, the world calls it safe storage, but for many countries like ours, it's also a quiet form of control, a reminder that the global financial system was never built for us to stand on our own. Some African countries have already started taking steps to change this situation, and we must clap for them. They want to change this situation and keep more control over their gold and reserves. Now, let's go to Ghana. The government built its own gold refinery and started programs to use locally mined gold to support its economy. One of those programs, called Gold for Oil, faced challenges, yes, and was eventually stopped. But it showed Ghana's effort to reduce dependence on the US dollar and use its own resources instead. In Zimbabwe, the government launched a gold-backed currency known as ZiG in 2024. The goal was to create a more stable local currency by, tying it to real gold stored in the country. And in South Africa, things are even more advanced. The Rand refinery, which has existed for over a century, is one of the world's top certified refineries. It refines, tests, and stores gold locally, all under international standards. Now, these examples, even though some of them have failed, prove that Africa can build systems that the world recognizes when there is investment, transparency, proper management, and of course, goodwill. They show that it is possible to store and manage our own gold right here on the continent instead of sending it overseas for validation or safekeeping. Kenya can learn these examples. We don't have to copy them exactly, but we can study what worked, what failed, and how to build something that fits our own situation. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't whether we can do it, it's whether we are willing to invest in the systems that let us stand on our own. If Kenya truly wants to take control of its gold and reduce its dependence on foreign systems, these are a couple of practical steps maybe they can consider. First, the government, through the central bank, can build a secure national vault designed to store gold safely. Now, this would mean, as we said, setting up a high security facility with international auditing and monitoring systems so that the world can trust the safety and transparency of our reserves. Second, Kenya could invest in or even partner with a local gold refinery to make sure our gold meets international purity standards. This refinery could work towards getting global certification so that Kenyan gold is recognized everywhere, just like gold from South Africa or Switzerland, right? Thirdly, Parliament could pass a Gold Reserve Act, a law that clearly defines how the country's gold is stored, who manages it, how it's audited, and how often those records are made public. This would help prevent corruption and make sure the gold actually belongs to Kenyans, not just on paper, but also in practice. And maybe Kenya could work with countries like South Africa or Ghana to create a regional gold storage and trading center, an East African gold reserve facility, or even an African gold reserve facility. This would allow African countries to trade, borrow, or secure loans using their own gold within Africa instead of running to London or New York. And maybe finally, Kenya needs to invest in training experts, local auditors, security personnel, and policy specialists who can manage and protect these systems independently. All of this takes time and money, but it's possible. The goal is simple. If we say we own our gold, we should be able to see it, protect it, and manage it under our own laws and terms, not someone else's. Because the truth is, we can't talk about financial freedom, especially we as Africans. We cannot talk about financial freedom when our wealth is still stored in foreign vaults. We can't talk about sovereignty when our access to our own gold depends on another country's approval. If today London wakes up and they say we don't recognize the government in power, our gold might be frozen. What will we do? And this is not about rejecting partnerships or isolating ourselves from the world. This is about building systems that protect us, the same way other nations have built theirs. If Kenya invests in its own vaults, its own refineries, and its own people, will be taking a major step towards real independence, not just political independence, but economic independence as well. And I believe in this country, we have a lot of young people who can actually advise the country on the way forward. We shouldn't look at creating secure vaults as such a hard thing for us as Africans. Why are we not involving our young innovators? Why are we not taking this conversation to our young people who know how to do these things? Why are we not involving them? You get what I'm saying? So it's actually a bad picture when the same country that colonized you is where you feel now your money is going to be safe in, or your gold is going to be safe in. Why are you independent? Why are we actually independent? We shouldn't just concentrate on political conversations. Let's have economic conversations as well. Because, as I said, it's such a bad picture when Kenya goes to store its gold in London. Yes, I know other people are doing it, but we can be the pace setter. We are the pace setters in this whole climate agenda. Why can't we now build systems? Why can't we be the pace setters in building systems or coming up with systems that are going to protect our gold? Yani tumekaa tu hivi tukaangaliana tukajiambia gold yetu iwezi kuwa safe Kenya, lazima tuistore huko London. And I believe they are also charging us for those services. And I believe we also have political risks as well. We can do that short term. I'm for it. Do that short term. But as you are doing it, please create systems that are going to serve Kenyans. And this is the problem that is affecting us as Africans. We are too political that we forget we are not advancing system-wise. We are not advancing system-wise, guys. And a country that has poor infrastructure, no matter how many times we keep saying we are independent, we are not independent. We are not independent. If we cannot look at this as a problem that needs Kenyan solutions, where you look at it, you say, yeah, we need gold, of course, but can we actually now do that here at home? After we actually communicating to London, Kenya is not safe for anything. If it's not safe for our gold, then Is it also safe for its people? What message are you communicating to your colonizer? Anyways, I see where they are coming from. This is where you are like, short term, this sounds good. This is something we can actually do. But as we are doing it, can we come up with ways to make sure that we strengthen our own systems? Guys, let's advocate for systems and structures. If we do not have that, we are going to collapse. We are going to collapse if we cannot store our own gold. No matter how much we argue, sijui sovereignty, sijui independent, sijui nini, we are not independent. We are not independent. And that is actually a challenge to Kenya and other African countries. Create something of your own. Own it, control it, let it serve you as an African. But what do I know? Anyways, me, I want to hear what you know on the comment section. Is it a good move? Are we reading into it too much? Does this mean that Africa is poor when it comes to systems and structures? Would really be interested in your views on that. But I also appreciate you guys tuning in all the way to the end of this conversation. Share your thoughts with me on the comment section. I treasure our engagement on the comment section. I go there and I read a couple of comments and I'm like, yeah, we are going towards the right direction. So I appreciate you just making sure that you also share your thoughts on the comment section. Goes a long way. Also, if you would want to support independent journalism, guys, we have our MPESA number right there on your screen. Our PayPal details are right there. Our PayBill and account number is also right there on your screen. And if you are not able to do this financially, consider subscribing. If you haven't, consider sharing our work. It goes a long way into making sure that, you know what, people continue consuming our content. And let me know if it's of impact, as I said, on the comment section. And a huge thank you to Team LNN for always putting this together. Really do appreciate your services. So how about we catch each other tomorrow? Remember to also share a couple of topics we can look into. Some of these come highly recommended by you. Like someone sent this to me on Instagram and they were like, Lynn, this is happening. Can you dig deeper into this? And here we are having a conversation about it. So let me know what your thoughts are on the comment section. I appreciate that. And hopefully we see each other tomorrow, depending on whether we have a video to upload. So hopefully we do. So see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.